have the opportunity to sort of examine Bernie Sanders, Mehdi Hassan, and the Social Democrats who take their cues from people like Mehdi Hassan, Bernie Sanders, AOC, and that is the majority report. We get to see all four. We get to see 4 Social Democrats and one screen. Isn't it fun, guys? So here you see 3, but they're going to bring in the Messiah, the Bernie Sanders, the guy that they consider a Messiah to the progressive movement, if you can call it a movement. They call themselves a movement. But we're going to start from the beginning. This is Mehdi Hassan, and they're examining Bernie Sanders going on CNN. And the reason the title is Elected Progressive Democrats or Elected Progressive Democrats are so useless to the people in Gaza is because they straddle the fence. They make sure to stand with certain empire talking points or make sure they don't cross those talking points. And then they also do some left stuff. But they make sure not to go too far out of the bounds of what's acceptable, right? They make sure they don't do that. People like Mehdi Hassan is that. Majority Report is definitely that. And of course, Bernie Sanders is the king of that. So let's listen to how they saw this.
What about just the vibes of an election year where there's going to be massive protests, I assume, at Congress if Netanyahu turns up while leading a genocide? There's going to be massive protests in Chicago at the DNC and uncommitted delegates. We could have a 1968 scene on our hands. How does that general image of chaos and division, Democrats in disarray, which the media loves that headline, how does that help Biden going into a very close election? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's play this clip. And
you mentioned 1968. Here we go.
This is Bernie Sanders on what was he on this weekend? I don't know.
This is with Amanpour on CNN. So he was on yesterday, and
who has been doing? We should say it's been doing. Christian Amanpour has been doing a really very good.
She's one of the best at CNN right now, without a shadow of a doubt.
And she's showing her bona fides as somebody who's an actual international correspondent as opposed to someone just sitting in a studio, because she just gets it. Yeah, like what Israel has been engaging for this long.
There was a long interview with Sanders, but this is apropos for what we've just been talking about.
Semitism is a vile and disgusting ideology, which, as everybody knows, in the last 100 years alone, has led to the deaths of many, many, many millions of people. We got to fight anti-Semitism in every way that we can. But for anybody to suggest that we cannot be critical of the government of Israel or the government of Italy or the government of Ireland, for whatever reason, is not what democracy is about. So I happen to believe, not everybody agrees with me, that the war policies of the Netanyahu government are a disaster. They are causing unprecedented harm. They are in violation of international law and absolutely in violation of American law, by the way. But I think people who are critical, the idea that people who are critical of what Netanyahu is doing are anti-Semitic, that is nonsense. And that is a very, very dangerous line to cross in terms of freedom of expression in this country.
And for our generation.
But think about the position the Social Democrats are in, which is, to me, is always a weird position. And you notice in the beginning of this video, they're framing how they're talking about the convention in Chicago is like comparing it to an old one. It's always they're hoping to get the Biden administration to do the right things, to calm down these people, do the right thing, do these things to calm them down so they will support you. It's never if you do the wrong thing, we're not going to support you. It's never that sort of framing. And just like in, what did we just cover where they didn't Sean Fain, just like in the previous segment with Sean Fain, he didn't want to say Joe Biden's name. He just said to the powers that be. This is Bernie Sanders doing the same thing here. Let's listen to this interview.
Who grew up in the era of never again and are very, very committed to that. I think it's really tough when we see this word weaponized and maybe lose its sting and its importance, as Kenneth Stern warns. So I want to ask you, my question to you is, what do you think now is going to happen to Biden and his campaign? Where do you think all of this is going to lead? Because it's also about American foreign policy.
So, before we let them answer, what do you think Bernie's going to say? Now, you may have seen this video, and he might, you're going to be unfair, but for those that may not have seen this video, what do you think Bernie Sanders will say here? Like, she's basically saying, what do you see happening? What's happening in Gaza? How do you see that reflecting here in American politics, possibly in November? Let's see what Bernie Sanders says to this question.
Well, in terms of his campaign, I am thinking back, and other people are making this reference, that this may be Biden's Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson.
If this is Biden's Vietnam, that's not good. So you have Bernie Sanders coming out saying something like this. This could be Biden's Vietnam because of what he's doing and what people are saying. But he's doubling down on the protests. And the reason I say they're useless, these elected progressives are useless to the protests on college campuses, and they're also useless to the people in Gaza. Because with all of their advocacy to do the right thing, they lose their spine when it comes to talking to the people in their party who's actually doing this. Because if it was Trump doing all of this stuff, they possibly would be out picketing. They possibly be organizing. They possibly would be doing anything impossible. Because it's fine when you're an elected progressive to go against the empire, long as it's the red empire that's in power. When it's a blue empire, then you swallow some of your policy beliefs. Then you're not as strict on some of your policy beliefs, i.e. AOC and the immigration facilities. This is the issue with social democracy. We saw it all throughout today's episode, even with Max Alvarez. In order to make a deal to remain in the good graces, even if it's to remain in the room, even if it's at the kids' table, you have to make a deal. You have to be able to come on board with some of the empire's way of thinking. And you're not going to be coming off of that. And in the Social Democrats case, the thing that that's most egregious to me is what Malcolm X and MLK describe as them. That they're white liberals and they're willing to sell you out in order to remain sort of in that, at that kids table that they see as a power position. Sitting at the kids table is a power position to them because they're in the room. But we all know that at the kids table, none of the kids have any power. That's essentially what's happening with the Social Democrats, elected Social Democrats. Let's finish out and listen to what the Majority Report and Mehdi Hasan says about this interview.
Johnson, in many respects, was a very, very good president. Domestically, brought forth some major pieces of legislation. He chose not to run in '68 because of opposition to his views on Vietnam. And I worry very much that President Biden is putting himself in a position where he has alienated not just young people, but a lot of the Democratic base in terms of his views on Israel and this war.
I mean, tough to argue. Although I don't think we're going to see Biden step aside, although I think that would be effective, frankly. But I don't think he's going to step aside.
Yeah, I think that window closed, and the only reason he steps aside now is it's a health issue.
Right.
I mean, his poll ratings are not that bad. I mean, they're just not. It's a close race, right? It shouldn't be this close. Okay, there's two different things. One, to be clear, it shouldn't be close. Donald Trump shouldn't be close to anyone in a normal country. He would not be polling anywhere near the possible.
What does that mean in a normal country? I thought we were the beacon of democracy. You guys buy into the January 6th nonsense? The losing democracy nonsense? That's weird to say that. Mehdi.
The possibility of winning. The guy's on trial. The guy is a fascist. The guy tried to destroy American democracy. Put that to one side. I think you swap out Biden for any other generic Dem. It's not like they're going to suddenly have a 10-point lead on Trump. This country is so divided. The negative partisanship is so high that those are the numbers we have. And that's why it's such an important to get your base out, right? So important to get your people knocking on doors in an election where anywhere between 40 to 70,000 voters could decide the entire election for the entire country. You can't take risks. You need to be able to inspire and energize. I just don't see that. And it's not just Gaza, by the way. Are you seeing that on other fronts? I'm not seeing that on other fronts either from Biden.
Well, the
marijuana thing was good, but what do they do?
Well, the marijuana thing, I mean, but I'm looking back at like, you know, the pause that they did on that liquid natural gas export facility permitting. Bill McKibben says that was the biggest thing that we have seen, bigger than the Willow project, a screw up. I mean, bigger than anything. But there's not going to be any coverage of it because it's all stepped on because of what's going on with. And
you can't even just blame the media or Republicans.
So they're upset that the crumbs that Joe Biden is attempting to market to bring back voters is being overshadowed by a genocide. They don't like that. Should it not happen that way? Should a genocide not trump any and all other news? These are social democrats.
Republican body, you have Democrats encouraging this crap. You have, the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. That was sponsored by a Democrat and a Republican. Ridiculous bill that sucked up media and political oxygen this week.
There's a quality of this that's reminiscent about like the HR 1 when the Democrats took the Congress, the House against Trump. And they're unveiling their big signature piece of legislation, which is going to be a huge message bill. And instead, everybody's talking about Nancy Pelosi censuring Ilhan Omar at the time, because that's what they decided to do. There's a similar sort of like quality that's going on here. These, whatever it is, providing DACA coverage under Obamacare today, nobody's going to be talking about.
But you see, they're upset that nobody's talking about all these other little things that Joe Biden, and they're little compared to a genocide. I don't care how big they are. They're little compared to a genocide. They want no positive coverage is getting out. How is this an ally to people in Gaza? How is this an ally to people that are protesting? How is this framing this point of view allyship to those people?
About that tomorrow because they're talking about Netanyahu or what's going on college campuses.
It's a simple political calculation. If Joe Biden were to come out tomorrow and say, we are cutting arms to Israel until we get a ceasefire right now, until Netanyahu says we're staying out of Rafah, and until more aid goes in, right? If he said that, what would that cost him? What would that cost him? Because I hear people say, well, you can't afford to lose Jewish votes just to win Muslim and Arab votes. Most Jewish voters in this country don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. I don't understand what the political calculation is that prevents you from picking a fight with Benjamin Netanyahu. There is none. He's super unpopular. The only people who like Benjamin Netanyahu in this country are the House GOP, right? Nobody likes Benjamin Netanyahu. It's an easy fight to have. He doesn't have it because he doesn't want to. Because it's not about political calculation. He likes Benjamin Netanyahu. He feels it his obligation to do this behind-the-scenes bullshit strategy where behind the scenes he doesn't like Netanyahu. It just doesn't work. We're 7 months in, and it's a win-win all around. If you come out for a ceasefire, you get international respect. You look like a strong leader. You're doing morally the right thing. You're shoring up your flank with progressives and non-white voters in places like Michigan and Georgia.
I literally don't understand the strategy of the social democrat as I'm listening to all this more broadly. Let's take a more broader look at what's going on instead of the specific. I don't understand the strategy. You're in a party that is facilitating a genocide. You're doing protests, and he says the protest is not going to change what he does. Yet you're telling people to go vote for him. How, with this sort of strategy, do you ever get what you want? How do you get what you want if you're willing to vote for him when he's saying, no, I'm not doing none of that? He said Medicare for all, I'll veto that shit. Because he give you some NLRB appointments? We're supposed to overlook all the bad stuff. And this is the deal why I don't understand. It is not, you're not reaping a significant enough return to be a social democrat, to be a progressive Democrat. Any good you get is outweighed by tons of bad by simply giving more power to the Democrats by sheer numbers. Like, meaning, if we vote in progressives, so Democrats go from having, 48 senators. Let's do this. Let's do the House. Let's say the Democrats go from having, 210 seats, and then we vote in 20 progressives. We're like, oh, we got 20 progressives. We're gonna get some progressive shit. Really? There's 210 Democrats who aren't progressives. So how is that going to happen? We are voting, supposedly, just go with the most lenient framing of this. We're voting for good people to put on a good team, we're voting for good people to put on a bad team, but the bad team is led by bad leadership, all of them. The people who are next in line to be leadership, they're all bad too. We elected a bunch of bench warmers who don't even get in the game. How does that help us? It doesn't make any sense. All you're doing is giving more power to the top of the leadership that does want to do all the things you don't want to have happen. That's why this doesn't make any sense to me. That's as clear as I can put it. Let's listen to a little more, and then we're gonna go to a Bernie video where he's talking about the protests, and it's again. Like, I'll wait to give my commentary until we get to his video.
Who are you pissing off? You're pissing off the House GOP and a few Christian evangelicals.
I think your point about him well, you're saying that he would look strong. He looks weak. Like, so we talk about his age, and that's that we can't change that, right?
Definitely.
But Sam has made this point before, that the age is kind of correlated with a perception of him as a weak leader.
Yes.
And there was
the age. We think he has bad numbers, polling numbers on his age, because people see him as a weak leader, or because he walks like he's about to stumble, or because of all of the gaffes. You see how the Bernie Sanders industrial complex can't give an honest critique here, because the establishment has outlawed any sort of real critique about his age. The only thing you're allowed to talk about in this space about his age is to pretend like it really is about his age, or something else like leadership, and not the fact that people can see with their own eyes that this guy is in decline. This is the deal, social democrats, which makes them useless.
There was a poll in CNN that said 81% of people, and this was taken a few weeks ago, it's probably higher, of people 18 to 35 disapprove of how he's handling Israel and Gaza. But in general, the majority position in America right now is they don't approve of Israel's actions now, and that's been a shift. So if he wants to look strong, perhaps stand up to the leader of the client state that is entirely dependent on our military aid for their survival by using an ounce of leverage. That would help him with the age stuff, because he...
You know, this supposed leverage, we don't really have this leverage. Israel's the one with the leverage, because Israel knows it's more, the United States is only helping them so that they have a military outpost in the Middle East. If Israel was in Finland, nobody, they wouldn't even be involved in this. So this idea, we're just going to pull funding. Why? So we can lose access to a very significant military post? We're not doing that. When has a failing empire scaled back? That's not happening. Let's get back to the video.
He has some vitality.
When did Biden look strongest as president of the United States? In my view, he looked strongest as president of the United States when he did the State of the Union, and he got heckled by Republicans, and he heckled them back. Right? People like a fighter. I've said this before. It's not even about...
These guys are a part of independent media But yet they're talking about campaigns like corporate people talk about campaigns, looking strong. That is absolutely not a thing. When did Biden look his strongest? At the State of the Union? Are you on crack? Are you on crack? At the State of the Union. Well, maybe Joe Biden was on crack that day because he was hopped up on something. But let's listen to the rest of this. Oops.
It's not about left and right, like we're on the left. It's not about what your politics, policies, yeah, that's all important. But actually, people just want someone with fire in their belly who's willing to have a fight. And guess what? You've been given the gift. You could have a fight with Benjamin Netanyahu, Itamar Ben-Gvir, and Bezalel Smotrich, like the worst people. It's like MBS during the Trump era. It was easy for Democrats to call out Trump because the bad guy was MBS, like a cartoon villain. Well, we've got another cartoon villain. His name's Netanyahu.
Yeah, I that's why I say I think it's Biden's most ideological position he's held probably in his career. I mean, you can go back and I'm sure you're aware of that. When Menachem,
he's been a Zionist, wanted to have a genocide person this whole time, and you guys wanted to vote for him. That's nice. Isn't that just grand? Let's go to another video. This one is Bernie Sanders. I think we've watched enough of that. This is Cori Bush shouting out Senator Sanders in his video he put out. And this is what they do. They put out videos instead of calling up the person who's causing the problem, but they put out videos so people out there say, look, he's doing something. No, he's not. He's putting out a video for you to see. That's it. So let's listen to Bernie Sanders and understand the critique is not what he's saying. He could be saying a bunch of good stuff. The critique is you saying all this good stuff does what when you are in bed with facilitating funds going to Israel? You're in bed with the Zionist project. What does this all mean that you're saying about the protests? What did this all mean that you're saying about the protests when the person you're telling us to vote for is the one who's causing the problem for the protest?
Are you ready for a very radical statement?
Shut up.
Well, here it goes. I support the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, and this is what it says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, end of quote. Let us be clear. Protests and demonstrations have played an enormously important and positive role in modern American history. Without protests led by Dr. King and others, we would not have made progress in eliminating segregation in America, in combating racism. Without protests, women in America would still be second-class citizens, unable to control their own bodies or have equal opportunities in the workforce. Without protests, many of our gay brothers and sisters would still be hiding their sexual identity. Today, on college campuses all over this country, students are exercising their constitutional right to protest. They are standing in opposition to American policy, which is providing billions of dollars for Netanyahu's right-wing extremist Israeli government's war against the Palestinian people. A war which has already killed 33,000 Palestinians and injured 77,000 more, 2/3 of whom are women and children. A war which has destroyed or damaged more than half of the housing in Gaza. A war which has essentially annihilated the healthcare system in Gaza. A war which has done incredible damage to the civilian infrastructure in Gaza, electricity, clean water, and sewage. A war which has bombed every one of the 13 universities in Gaza and left hundreds of thousands of children without schooling. In my view, demonstrations must be nonviolent. Not only is that the right thing to do, it is the most effective thing to do. The focus must be on the suffering of the people in Gaza, not bricks flying through windows. And absolutely, we must all work together to make certain that we free our country from all forms of bigotry, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, racism, homophobia, and every other form of hatred. It is the most.
So it was hard to watch all of that without talking, but I'm going to rewind it and touch upon a couple of points. I know there's 3 distinct points that I want to make about this clown shit here. Because he actually, if you listen, he's actually chastising the protests. The guy who was arrested for protesting is chastising protesters today. If you didn't catch it, let's listen to it.
Are you ready for a very radical statement? Well, here it goes.
Actually, let me say this. What the social democrats do is buy into the narrative of the establishment. And that's what Bernie Sanders does in his video by pretending that protest is violent. Actually, let's let it play and then I'll make the second. I don't want to get ahead of myself.
I support the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, and this is what it says, quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances, end of quote. Let us be clear. Protests and demonstrations have played an enormously important and positive role in modern American history. Without protests led by Dr. King and others, we would not have made progress in eliminating segregation in America, in combating racism.
Was there any Molotov cocktails, any bricks thrown through windows during the civil rights movement that you're praising right now, Bernie Sanders? Was there?
Without protests, women in America would still be second-class citizens, unable to control their own bodies or have equal opportunities in the workforce. Without protests, many of our gay brothers and sisters would still be hiding their sexual identity. Today.
So this is what social democrats do. So you see how he hit on every point. He hit on women, he hit on Black people, he hit on the gay community. So he hit on those 3, checking off all of his identity politics boxes, checking off all the categories of people he wants to market this to, like he's really championing this idea. That's the presentation he wants to give. That's what he wants you to believe. Let's listen.
On college campuses all over this country, students are exercising their constitutional right to protest. They are standing in opposition to American policy, which is providing billions of dollars for Netanyahu's right-wing extremist Israeli government's war against the Palestinian people. A war which has already killed 33,000 Palestinians and injured 77,000 more, 2/3 of whom are women and children. A war which has destroyed or damaged more than half of the housing in Gaza. A war which has essentially annihilated the healthcare system in Gaza.
Now, all of the atrocities that Bernie Sanders is describing was supported by the person you're seeing on the screen right now, known as Bernie Sanders. All the way, I think, when did he make his pivot to start talking about Palestinian shit? I think it was in late November, maybe December. But we forget, you were protested by your own staff. You had a letter written to you by your own staff. The issue with social democracy and social democrats is this waffling, is this sometimes you're on my side, sometimes you're on the other side. And they're opposing sides. This is why you can't effectively get anything done, because you're hopping to 2 sides instead of staying on one side and trying to push that mission through. But then you'll hop back on the other side. It's like it's like you're playing a tug of war, but you're just with yourself. You get on this side with the rope, you pull, and then you hop to the other side, then you pull. That's all you're doing. You're not really going anywhere. Either way. So let's continue.
A war which has done incredible damage to the civilian infrastructure in Gaza,
That you
electricity,
supported
clean water, and sewage.
Initially.
A war which has bombed every one of the 13 universities in Gaza and left hundreds of thousands of children without schooling. In my view, demonstrations must be nonviolent. Not only is that the right thing to do, it is the most.
So the first part of this video was the part, his progressive side. Then he has to come in with his establishment to say, look, I haven't gone crazy. Yeah, you give me leeway to say this, but now I'm shoring up the deal by saying the part that's your framing. Anybody can look and see that the vast majority of that protest is not violent. Anyone can see that. So to me, this shouldn't even, when talking about the protest, this shouldn't even be brought up to me. Because you're playing into the establishment, the U.S. empire's talking points. The other one is calling this anti-Semitism.
Effective thing to do. The focus must be on the suffering of the people in Gaza, not bricks flying through windows.
You see how the focus needs to be on the people of Gaza, not bricks flying through windows. Like the brick can't be part of the tactic to stop everything. And this is what he's also buying into the establishment framing that property is included in this so-called violence. Because there's no violence against people outside of the Zionists beating up some people. I think it was on the campus of UCLA or USC. Social democracy and social democrats are useless. Let's continue.
And absolutely, we must all work together to make certain that we free our country from all forms of bigotry, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia.
You see, this is his way of nicing up the anti-Semitism. He just includes other stuff. But the point, you understand why he's doing this. He is doing this to say, I'm saying it's anti-Semitism needs to go too. That's what the establishment is saying we need to say. And he just adds other things.
Racism, homophobia, and every other form of hatred.
And that's, you see, Bernie Sanders just gave you a clinic on how to appear progressive and at the same time tote the establishment line. He's an expert at it. AOC is not an expert. She's still an amateur. She's still pretty bad.